Oh.
When
So
that
Paul,
happens,
what about that?
what?
What about those? What would you call them earlier? The oh God, what I've already forgotten what it was. It wasn't cat yak. It was word yak.
Word
What happened with
yak.
that word yak?
Well, we've got word yak, we've got word yark, we've got we need synonyms for vomit. Is basically what it comes down to. We need like 100 of them, and chat should help out with this.
He had
But we need
had
Well,
more
that
people.
great thing of ew, I stepped in an epilogue.
yes. Oh, get up. Somebody come clean up chapter 6. It's all over my socks.
Oh
Which I
God.
will maintain. Stepping on that in socks is the worst thing. Because, yeah.
It's bad. It's bad.
Yes. Because then you're not just cleaning your foot, you're cleaning your foot and your sock. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, toss the sock in the laundry. Pray to the gods that the some stain that might be there will come out, and that it wasn't a dead rat you stepped on.
Oh, yeah. Yesterday was, hey, Mom, there's a lizard in the living room. Okay. I come over. My daughter's standing there. I'm like, I have no problem picking up lizards, frogs, whatever. They're not going to bite me. And lizards biting you, it's just like, they can't do much.
Mm-mm.
And you're just like, you're more like, I'm trying to save you, little shits. Quit it. Well, I go to pick it up and I realize, nope, it's not frozen. It's not paralyzed. It's crunchy and dead. And I have never seen a 16-year-old jump back faster and start making gagging sounds. Once she realized that it was no longer dead, and of course the thing had no tail, which
Right.
tells me that my cat chose violence and tormented the poor thing until it was under a bowling bag.
That sounds like a cat.
Well, I have one that will do that. The other two will play with them, but not to the point of limb loss.
Hmm.
But the small one, nope. Nope. And she has, found them, killed them, and then, done the cat thing where she deposits them in the middle of the floor, yowls as loudly as she can
Look
so
what I
that you can
did.
come
See what
over.
I did.
It's like, look, I am a mighty hunter. See that?
I'm protecting the house and earning my keep. Feed me, human.
Yeah, well,
Give me treats. I
Tell me
deserve a
I'm a good kitty.
reward.
And see, this
this,
is how you do it, human. You don't go and get it from the fridge. You go kill it.
you know what? The thing is, this is the cat who can't figure out how to lick the squeezy treats from the tube. You have to put it in the bowl for her. So let's not give her too much credit here, all right? I love her. She's not the dumbest creature in the house, but wow, is she weird.
Jesus Christ.
Could be talking about myself there too. Anyway,
On that note, howdy, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Dev Robot Society. I am Paul E. Cooley. Joining me today, Veronica Jiguer and Terry Mixon. How the hell are you fine party people?
present.
Yay.
Wow, there's so much excitement in this room. Wow, this is going to be a great show, I can already tell. V, tell me something interesting about your life.
Ooh,
Uh,
that's a wide-ranging question.
I mean,
Interesting.
really? Oh, let's
What have you
see.
been up to?
Um, all of pretty much every current project that I've had is wrapped up except for one because I'm still waiting on pickups, and they're going to be a lot because fantasy and pronunciations, and I just it will be a day of pickups, and I can't complain about it. I'll just like, okay, we'll get through it. Um, so is this the Dead Chat Society? If I stand up on my desk and try to go, oh, Captain, my Captain, I will probably like fall through the desk or I'll topple back. And I would rather not because mom has to take care of herself. So we're not going to play that game.
John Walker says, remember, your statute of limitation isn't up on most of those interesting things.
Yeah, but the fact that they're in Texas and I'm in Florida, somebody's making laws that are going to, make it not fun anymore.
Yeah,
But
pretty much.
who knows? So waiting on that. But otherwise, the other projects are wrapped up. So been working on the blanket. I have one more row of this fun, fiery color for the latest Sapphic Apocalypse novella that I finished. I'm wrapping up some other projects. Writing. For those who are listening to the podcast, you are missing Julius eating a cardboard box. I'm not. There's something for After Dark. I'm just going to keep to myself.
Oh.
But
When the pussy eats back. Dun, dun, dun.
That was highly
see,
unnecessary.
why did I have to wait? Terry went there.
That was highly
You know,
unnecessary.
with relish. So yeah, I know I have one book deadline coming up in July, but I know it's coming up, so I have to like pick up the pace on finishing the first draft so I can finish the notes, because I have to add in a bunch of like, there are two main characters, so we're going to add, and it's third person POV, but I need to add different POVs through to hit the 80. I think the target is like 80,000 words, maybe 90,000. So yeah, other than that, lots of reading. I've been doing a bunch of like catching up on reading and planning stuff for the second half of the year. And it's getting into summer, which means, yay, schedules are changing. So I'm moving kids home from college and kids are starting summer jobs. And I will be listening to more audiobooks in the car as I drive here and there and everywhere.
Here, there, and everywhere.
Yep. What about you, Terry?
I hear that your youngest is now driving and the sidewalks near your home are clear.
Well, here's the funny thing. We don't have sidewalks in my neighborhood because Florida. But yeah, I took the youngest to get her learner's permit. The rules here, you have to have your learner's permit for a full year before you can get your license. And our house rules have always been you can't get your learner's permit until you have a job. With the idea being you need to save money to put towards a car or help pay for insurance or what have you. But you must have a job before you get learner's permit. So she started working this week and the place opens next week. Yeah, I think next week. So that'll be it. And the funny thing is she's practiced driving with a truck driving simulator.
What could possibly go wrong?
Wait a minute. If I know the truck driving simulator we're talking about, the physics are not very good in that simulator.
Well, it's the one on Steam that yeah. So this is the same one that the Mighty Ginger and his buddy have been like having hour-long epic drives. God. Yeah, and parking and all this. But like they have like the foot pedals and the gear shift and the wheels. So I know when truck driving happens because it's all set up in his office and she's been doing that. So I'm not worried about her. Then again, I'm not going to be the one doing the first round of driving training because I don't have the neurochemicals to keep up with that. Afterwards, I'm fine, but I just no. So,
Terry, speak to us.
Well, they're downstairs now, replacing one of the tiles in the downstairs shower because it's scratched, and or possibly merely polishing it out. That depends on the contractor and the wife wrestling over what actually takes place. So I don't know how the outcome of that's going to work out. Adding a little bit more grout down there, and that will set things up for next Wednesday for them to come install the shower glass upstairs and knock out all of the remaining items.
Punch lists.
Yeah. The list is down onto one page at this point. Once they finish the upstairs shower, then we'll schedule out the upstairs windows for 2 weeks out after that. Different contractor.
Fun.
That's okay. It'll take one day. They did the entire downstairs in one day, so it's not going to be too much of a problem, I'm sure. But we don't want to schedule it so we can, kick the cats out of the upstairs and have places for them to be while the windows are being done.
Makes sense.
that would be important.
My deadline for the book I'm writing is the 25th of this month.
That's
I have
3 weeks.
3 weeks. I have written what? How many books have I written? How many chapters have I written? Seven.
You said-
7 chapters that I've written out of an estimated 40. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh boy, nothing at all.
I mean, what's your definition of wrong?
Oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine, but I'm not going to be here next week because I need to focus. Every day that I have interruptions, it ruins my writing for the day. It's one of those things I just have to get up and I have to do it without much interruptions going on. So I'm scheduling out the next 9 days to finish writing out the chapter and then start reading through it. Writing out the book and then start reading through it. So
Fair enough.
I'll get it done.
Well, that's cool. We'll miss you next week. We'll have to find somebody to sit in.
Jeez.
Why don't you have, your cats sit in?
They sleep too much.
Yeah,
I
mine
see.
are currently sleeping on the sofa.
Big shock.
I know, right?
Well, so Terry's got a mountain of work ahead of him. I've got a mountain of work ahead of me, and I've been chipping away at it, but it's just not going very fast. I don't know if I remember, I don't remember if I said this last week or not, but I'm now down to 345,000 words estimated that I need to record this before the end of the year. I don't know that I'm going to be able to write much the rest of the year because I just have so much fucking recording, but I still owe Raven Tell a book and still don't know what that book is. The only good piece of news I got is that my canary in the coal mine finished extinction and was raving about it, so maybe I didn't fuck things up after all. I got a couple of continuity errors I need to fix, just switching names back and forth. If I had planned for the Black to be a series from the very beginning and go this far, I would never have named 2 of the characters Sarah and Shauna, because my brain does not. They're now in the same areas and talked about and everything else, and flipping chapters between the 2 of them, and it's so fucking confusing. So I've screwed up a couple times that he found, which means I need to go through the book and make sure there aren't more that than he found. And apparently I killed 1 helicopter twice and another helicopter 3 times. So I got to go back and look at the names of things and make sure I've got them right. So yeah, there's a few continuity things I need to fix, but nothing major wrong with the book, at least according to my canary. So we'll see
That's
how that
good.
goes. And Saculina finally got published. So if you are interested in, this is the first traditional horror novel I've written in a while, I guess. And what I mean by that is it's horrific. So if you want to read about body snatchers, essentially, but with a lot of sex and body horror a la Cronenberg, I think this will be in your wheelhouse. So hopefully you'll give it a chance. It's up there for $2.99 right now. So if you want to help me out, go take a gander at it. I think it's a good story. I think you'll enjoy it. I can't wait to record it. Please shoot me. I think there's only 12 characters. Anyway.
You think there's only 12?
I think there's only 12. I have to go back and count. Luckily, not all of them talk. Some of them are referenced, and some of them show up in scenes and don't say much. Unfortunately, not all of them are on screen at the same time, so it won't be too bad. It just means I need to come up with a Caribbean accent, and it's got to be better than my Australian accent. Anything can be better than my Australian accent. Just god awful. Anyway, yeah. Nobody cares. Write faster.
That's a valid thing there. That's
I'm wondering,
faster.
who did you interview?
Yeah, so am I. Nobody cares. Write faster. That was Mercedes Lackey.
Oh, yeah, that does sound like Misty.
Yeah. Anyway. So I still have Kill Shelters outstanding. Got to get that ready for publication. Still waiting on cover for Oceania, and I guess I need to jump back into Extinction and start going through it. And God help us when I start recording that. Oh my God, I'm going to need so much cocaine. Just bring all the coke over here.
I was about to say, you said tea wrong there.
I told my wife this morning, she's like, what can I do to help you? I was like, give me a kilo of cocaine. I understand I'll keep you up for a week.
Oh, dear God.
Alas, that's not a possibility. So now there's been some stuff going on in the private life that I'm not going to share, but it's been a really difficult couple of weeks here. So we're finally getting through some of that, and other things are ongoing. So that's not exactly helping productivity, but it is what it is.
And
JR
JR
says, Mercedes' future story about Lidless sounds fun. Is that you as well, V?
Yes. So if I've ever made veiled references to 1990s Toronto and a magical marital device that may or may not have a genie trapped inside of it. Yes.
Is there fairy dust involved?
How many speeds?
There needs to be fairy dust involved.
No speeds because it's an ancient relic. Yes. Oh, she talked about Live Was Unexpected. Dude, you have no idea because, yes, John. Yes. Part of me is like, I don't know how much she said. I don't know what I can divulge. But yeah, pretty.
Who rubbed the mighty? Wait a minute. Where am I? What is going on here? Where am I? Holy moly!
Okay, to be fair, I was the one who suggested naming the genie Chekhov because it's going to go off in the third act.
Oh, that's bad.
Yes.
John says the faster you rub it, the bigger the genie gets. Yeah, we're gonna let that one go. That one go.
But it's
wow.
She's
After Dark's
blushing.
gonna be fun.
How
today.
nice is that?
It's one of those things like I don't know how much I can talk about it because I'm one of 4 authors on it. I don't know how much Misty has said, but I've got the 2 collaborative projects I'm working on. The one I'm working on, just me and Misty, is a sequel to the book she wrote with Anne McCaffrey. The Ship Who Searched, and we're writing The Ship Who Saved. But the other one is with the 4 of us who wrote Secret World Chronicle, and it is set in 1990s Toronto, so kind of like urban fantasy because that's where all of the various demigods and folks went because, of course, it's Toronto in the 90s, and hijinks ensue. And we all wind up like owning certain characters while putting things. So I own a magical girl who has an octopus familiar, and a kitsune, and a very acerbic, asexual Quebecois vampire designer. He's great. He's so bitchy. And who else? A succubus waitress. And I wind up holding a bunch of the mythos for the for how certain humans become how they escape the mundane and become part of the paranormal. Because that's how the hockey defenseman becomes a demigod.
Of course.
Why wouldn't he?
Oh man.
And this is why, this is why you get what you get. And the thing is, one of the challenges in writing all of that with 4 people is there's so much good stuff, but you have to figure out like where all of the exciting stuff happens and then your lulls, and then exciting stuff and lulls. And it's a fun challenge, but I I still struggle with pacing when it comes to like the more action heavy parts.
Strange how that's coming to roost when we're talking about the topic today.
Was that a segue? Did I do a segue?
You did a segue, and it wasn't clumsy, unlike Terry's. Terry usually shifts you from fifth to first and then back to third. You know, when he tries to do a segue.
Hey, that's the only way you can wake the rest of your co-hosts up if you do that.
It's also a way to make your transmission fall out of the show.
Man.
He's not wrong.
I'm not wrong. So we are here to talk about action scenes and touch on that very topic that you were discussing, that very issue. Terry, how much action is in your books?
Well, you know, action can cover a wide variety of sort of things.
Are
we talking physical action? Are we talking romantic action? Are we talking, you know?
I
action.
I think we're talking physical action that doesn't necessarily end up in the bedroom.
You know, if you've ever watched Don't Drive Angry, you will have seen physical action in the bedroom, in coitus.
I've narrated way too much of that, thanks.
He's in the middle of, Nick Cage is in the middle of getting lucky, and then they break in trying to kill him. And so without any dismounting, there is lots of gunfighting going on.
You have got to be kidding me. That is the dumbest damn thing I've ever heard
I am
of.
completely and utterly not kidding.
I have...
Yes, bow chicka bow wow is physical action.
I have thoughts and questions, and they're probably better suited for After Dark.
I will have to see if I can find... I'm sure that scene is on YouTube, so I will have to see if I can find that so that I can paste it into the show notes.
Sounds
the
like
live
scene from Deadpool.
Maybe not so wrong.
I mean,
maybe not so wrong. Indeed.
What was the original question before I got Nick Cage in the bedroom? I totally lost. That just drove it right out of my brain.
Action is in your books.
A fair bit. I would say it's not majority action, but there's action when it's required.
Right. But how much is that?
Depends on the book. For example, The Forgotten Ship. Maybe 3 or 4 scenes that have action of some type in it. It wasn't, a lot of things going on. No guns were fired. There was maneuvering. There was stealing things. Do you count, a heist that's, going on and goes wrong? Is that action? Because no weapons are deployed.
No, action doesn't necessarily mean weapons.
So, yeah, maybe 3 or 4.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
B, how much action do you write in your stuff?
So for the stuff that's more sci-fi or like spec fic, let's do that. It tends to alternate. So I try to be really cognizant of having action scenes and then like catch up recap scenes. Mm-hmm. So every I want to say every chapter has an action scene, and then there's a term and I forget what it is. But there's like the recap and debrief.
It's Butcher's scene and sequel.
Thank you. Yeah. So I try to have that in every chapter. And if I'm starting a new idea or thought or kind of like, if I'm starting something that could be a new television episode. So if I'm writing and I'm thinking in like a, I tend to think of a book like a Netflix series. Mm-hmm. And every chapter would constitute an episode. And so within each chapter or episode, I usually start with action. And then there's kind of like the secondary action where there's still stuff going on, but it's not like breakneck speed. And it'll often explain why that action happened, or have smaller logical steps. And then after that is kind of the debrief, the take a breath, the giving the characters space to process, so that because they haven't, just because the action itself has stopped doesn't necessarily mean the characters have time to process.
Correct.
And for certain styles of writing, you need to those kind of need to be separate. So, but yeah,
Rick says
Rick
action
says,
and a rest, take a breath, recovery. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a fair amount. And then even with like the collaborative piece with 4 of us writing, there's usually an active thing that happens. And then there may be like getting to that action, then holy crap, it happens. And then there's the fallout or the consequences, and then there's the processing. So John says, agreed. You have to have the connective tissue bringing the action scenes together. Otherwise, you're J.J. Abrams. Exactly. And I don't like lens flare. It's not my thing. So Rick says, action, action, action without recovery can exhaust a reader. Yes. And fun fact, it will exhaust your narrator.
Fun fact, it will actually exhaust the writer.
Yes.
You can see a good example of a movie that exhibits that particular quality if you watch Gravity. It does not let up. It does not let up. It is just one crisis immediately following on the heels of the next crisis. Boom, 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 boom. There is no time to breathe.
And underwater is very, very similar. There's very little time to breathe. And you have like, I don't know, maybe 4 minutes where the character has time to actually reflect on what's going on. And it didn't work for me. I mean, I liked the idea of the movie and everything else and didn't mind the characters. That was not the problem. The problem was the story was just moving so damn fast that you just didn't have a chance to breathe.
Yeah. And so Rick says, but the narrator's paid to be exhausted. I get that. However, if I, as a performer, am trying to match the energy that you're putting into your action, yeah, I'm going to be exhausted, but I can take breaks. Your reader or your listener is going to have a hard time figuring out where to take breaks. And even if they just need 5 minutes, where they take the break is where they process and start to remember what's going on. They mentioned the movie Gravity. I literally can remember like 2, maybe 3 scenes out of that entire movie. And my first thought was Interstellar. No, that's not Interstellar. No, Interstellar. Interstellar is actually very good about having action. And then there's a long time of contemplation. I mean, there's a bunch of navel gazing in that movie, but it's Matthew McConaughey. So why wouldn't there be? But with Gravity, it's constant, constant, constant. And you don't get time to appreciate the story and the characters and the nuances. And by having those breaks in your action and having that, giving the characters time to breathe, gives your reader time to appreciate what you just did. So that's another really key spot.
Depending on what I'm writing, there's going to be quite a bit of action. Obviously, with Derelict Saga, there was quite a bit of action that was going on, but there were also many times where the characters were just talking. And the threat is still around there, but we had to give them a chance to talk. We have to give them a chance to figure out what the hell they're going to do. We have to give them a chance to freak out over what happened in the last scene. So staggering those things is just part of good storytelling, in my opinion. Even with Neptune Scars, the last 40,000 words of that book are just off the hook crazy. But I still give the characters time to basically reconnoiter at times and give the reader a break and give me a break. And sometimes it's just a matter of having somebody walk down a dark hallway, knowing the beasties are there and thinking to themselves about this, that, and the other while it's going on, and not even showing any action in that scene. It's the dread. It's the suspense of not knowing when it's going to hit, and that's what I write. So I try very consciously to make sure that I leave those gaps. Even in Extinction, there are parts where the last 60,000 words of that book are completely insane, and I can't wait to read. Y'all will read it. I really can't, but I had to find places where we can break it out and either give a diversionary, just cut to a scene for maybe 600 or 700 words with somebody who's tangentially related to what is going on, but is going to be in the mix real soon, just to give a break so that we can jump over to something else. And they got to jump between humans and creature, what the creature's doing and everything else, to try and not get everybody burned out on what's happening. I could write 7,000 words of some beastie destroying the city or whatever else, but it would get boring. It really would get boring. It sounds like it'd be cool as hell, but it would get boring. It's like a kaiju fight. If you actually go through and you look at Godzilla or something else, the amount of fighting they're actually doing on screen is very small. Most of what's going on in the kaiju books has to do with the humans anyway. So you're flashing back to the humans running for cover or trying to help whichever beastie they want to see win and things like that before cutting back to the beasties doing what they do. And it's because if it was just a fight the entire time, it would get boring. It would really get boring. And expensive. And very expensive. And even with something like Marvel, the Marvel Universe, any of those things, you can see where they take the breaks. Where they have those silly moments where Hulk beats the shit out of Loki, you know, stuff like that don't have anything to do with the major battle that's going on outside and everything else, because you need those moments. You have to have them.
You get the character development.
And also it's character development.
Yeah. You get the why for the what the hell just happened.
Yeah. And I think that's that's not something that should be really all that difficult, and it's not. You just have to be conscious and cognizant of it. And when you go through and you go back and read your work, which you better be doing, it's really easy to see where you're going to check out, because you're going to like, oh God, another fight. Oh, I need to find something to do here because I'm getting bored. Well, the reader's getting bored too. I can't just have a 90-minute space fight going on. I got to have some other stuff. I just have to have it as a reader. Most people fooled by fiction don't realize how quick most fights are anyway. That is very true, JR.
Yep.
And Rick says, even the recovery scene can be used to continue to build anxiety, dread, and tension. Yeah. In fact, that is where you build all the anxiety, dread, and tension of those quiet moments. This is an interesting question. John asks, which is more difficult, action in first person or in third? I think action is probably better done in third person, simply because a disassociated narrator is going to be able to show both sides of the fight more than, or whatever action is going on, rather than a first person. And so you get a different perspective. From a writing point of view, I think that all depends, man. It all depends on what the story is and what's going on with the characters and this, that, and the other. It just depends. But for a reader, if you want to give them more of what's going on around, and it just, again, depends on the story. If you're a third person, obviously you're going to be doing third person. If you're a first person anyway, you're going to be doing first person. And it just depends on what the story, the plot, the characters, and what are they fighting about? What is the fight? Are we having a gunfight where 3 shots are fired? Or are we having a gunfight where everybody empties their magazines and hits nothing? You know, like it usually goes. Which is it going to be?
And then, you know, you have the kind of fights that happen in, you know, I'm thinking like your space opera, where it's not people physically facing each other fighting. It's people commanding these huge mechanisms to fight. And you can have hundreds, even thousands of people who are completely reliant on the actions of maybe 10
Right.
or fewer who have to, control this thing and, coordinate, weapons fire. And so you can't necessarily describe everything that's going on when ship A is, trying to blow up ship B and ship B is trying to keep itself from being blown up. Because describing, pew, 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 or pew, 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 oh no, vroom, darn
Not
it.
long.
No, so what do? How do you describe the action without, how do you describe an action scene, or how do you have an action scene where you've got far too many people to be describing what each individual person is doing in the midst of that, like, ship battle?
I would flip between the characters and only give slices of their battle. Maybe figure out 5 or 6 scenes of their battle, and then I would kind of ape that with the rest of the crew that's out there doing it, to show them each doing something different, and also giving them quiet time where they're not getting blasted about. Maybe they're having to swoop over the ship or something to come in for another sortie. That gives them 30 seconds, 40 seconds to actually think. In that particular case, if I've got multiple characters that I can handle, then I would be switching between them, not rapid fire, but I'd be switching, well, sometimes rapid fire. It would depend on what the pacing is and what's going on. But you don't want to slog. You need to find a way to break it up. Even if that's zooming out for a second and showing another part of the battle that has nothing to do with your characters at all. Mm-hmm. Just as a quick zoom out. And then, of course, like she's talking about, like you were saying, you've got basically the chess master who's the commander or whatever, and then all the fighting things are his pieces. They're just the pieces where the commander is moving them to, and then you're getting insight into the pieces and what they're doing. And that's really, I guess, the trick when you're writing big space battles or any kind of warfare like that. Rick says, I prefer to keep POV with a single character. Head hopping can be exhausting. It can, but not necessarily, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. It depends on how many characters you have. Mm-hmm. In Derelict, I think I have 30, including the AIs and the SEs and etc. and other things that are going on. But not everybody's going to get a lot of screen time. Mm-hmm. But I do need them around. I do need them around and to get their perspective on what's going on quite often. And I'm not afraid to do that. I just try and spice it up and split it out a little bit to give everybody a little bit of screen time and where it makes sense for the plot. And then also kind of reference the action that's going on, whatever that might be, and the other problems that are happening. So it's a dance. It's a dance. It's a balancing act. It really is. Since you write first person. If you're writing first person, you're cheating. Why are you talking to me about this?
Well, for what John writes, he's got a very distinctive voice on the urban fantasy-esque stuff.
JR says, with regards to head hopping, I think some stories benefit from one POV and others from multiple viewpoints. True. I think that the adventures of Jared wouldn't pop as hard without the princess sidekick.
Keep stretching, pal. Keep stretching.
Shots fired.
Oh, wait a minute.
On a bridge.
Are we hold on here? Are we counting pop guns as shots these days?
On a bridge, e.g. space battle, the commander can engage with multiple characters and pull critical interaction from other heads, but the view is still the commander. This is true too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's often one of the challenges that you have when you've got that really close third person, is being very aware of what they can see and what they can experience in that battle, and not like hinting back and forth. Because once you break that, you're like, wait, how can they see that? How can they experience that? They're stuck in this corner and they have this particular view. So it's...
John says, the trick you used to block time for the Derelict Saga gave lots of characters more screen time. This is very true, and I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right. Because when the characters were talking over their blocks, and it was basically like telepathy to a certain extent, time more or less stops because they're communicating at such a speed that it's all thought. There's no speaking. And because it's all thoughts and images, they can communicate quicker. So they can have a very long conversation, relatively speaking, in the middle of a freaking space battle and it not really affect anything. You know, that this conversation to impart all this information could take place in 3 seconds, real time. And I think I used that and leveraged it as much as I could. And if you're listening to Neptune Scars, you know that I'm still leveraging it. So there's all sorts of ways to do it. John says, I doubt Kelsey would consider herself a sidekick. I snorted Diet Coke out of my nose. Screw you, Terry. I assume that was on the pop gun thing. So
Well,
I'm
I mean,
not really sure what that was referencing.
So, but if you snort Diet Coke out of your nose, then you, in fact, become a pop gun.
Oh. We could also make some jokes about, you know, Coke going out instead of going in. And so you're like the reverse of an addict, but we won't go there.
Matt says, I think reading-wise, I prefer a mix of first and third. Like in Derelict, the small personal fights are better than first, but then the wider battle scenes were more in third, and the mix worked for you. Okay. Yeah. You know, we get a very, very close POV on folks, and then it kind of pulls back. And I think as long as you're doing, depending on what you're writing, again, if you're writing something that's big in scope, then finding ways to make those switches and not disrupt the reader and not disrupt the characters while doing it, that's the trick. And that will help with pacing a whole lot if you learn those tricks. It really will. Kelsey thinks Jared is the sidekick.
Pretty sure she doesn't.
Wow. It's going to be that kind of afternoon chat.
I love how the reader is trying to tell the writer what their characters actually mean or doing or anything else. Because
I think the problem is that JR sees Kelsey as a side piece rather than a side kick.
Whoa.
So he's got a little...
Anyone going to tell Talbot that? Or does that mean that JR sees himself as Talbot? Or... I know. Huge.
Kelsey's spoiled.
Well,
what is she?
To be fair, JR does eat crayons even though he's not a Marine. So maybe.
Wow, you managed to disperse two entities at once.
It's a gift.
Wow.
Really? You went there? Come on. John says, like, got a Wick-esque gunfight to do for my next chapter, so this topic is perfectly timed.
Well, John, you need to definitely go look at the video I dropped in live because that's my suggestion for you right there.
Oh, boy.
Nickety warning. Oh, my Lord. Let's see. Talbot has way more humility and reflection than JR is capable of. Ooh, wow, Rick. Speaking of Wick, John Wick, the John Wick movies.
Have you ever watched those? You keep saying, but then I don't know if you've ever watched them.
I saw the first three. I have not seen the fourth.
I haven't seen the fourth either. I should, but I haven't.
I saw the first three. Go look at how that's paced. Because go look at some of the better action movies and see how they're actually paced. You have a fight and then you have the quiet moment of the character walking away or stumbling away or whatever else, bleeding all over the place, and going and doing something else that is nonviolent and hasn't got a whole bunch of action going on. We need those moments. We have to have them, especially in a flick like John Wick. You got to have them.
Well,
otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Well, and having those lows and reflective moments makes the action that more poignant. Because then you're like, oh yeah, you get more invested in it.
I agree. Matt says one of the other things that helped in Derelict was the ability to see from the ship's point of view. Almost a first-person perspective on an amount of data that a single person can process. Yeah, I cheated big time, and I like that cheat. I like that cheat. JR says the trick is to make sure the characters can physically move in the ways described. Too many have the human body do things that would physically break it. I have read those books. I've seen those movies. We all have. Where there's no way you could get that much leverage doing that.
No.
It's the
Yeah.
same with sex scenes.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. It's like, that's going to break the penis. What are you doing?
I
Snap
know
it like
there
the twig it is.
Well, I know that there are some authors who literally, like, if they're writing Why Choose, or where you have multiple partners in the scene, they actually have, those little art dolls that you can get at the art, you get the posable figures that you can get at the art shops with all the joints, and they'll have multiples of them, and they'll try to make sure that stuff is possible before actually trying to write it.
They should actually totally take pictures of that and then post it onto their Instagram account saying, working on a scene.
I would not be surprised if they don't, or if they do. I would not be. Yeah, I wouldn't, because it makes sense to figure out if something can be possible. Because once you make that mistake where it's like physically not possible, and there are plenty of us who read that, and it yanks us out of the story. So
word choice. Nothing. I was going to say, if you want to see what's possible and that you should not do, go read the Kama Sutra, and there will be some positions that are just physically impossible depending on body type.
Well, yeah.
And leverage.
But I see, I wasn't going with bedroom action. I was going with actual, like, physical non-bedroom action where you're like talking about fights. So if you need, like, do your research, go watch a self-defense video. Have, if you've got to figure out, can someone actually hold something like this and turn? Yes, no, maybe. And there's certain things, like flexibility wise, that women can do that guys can't. So it's just, hip width, or where, certain flexibility things.
When does he become the clean one?
Yes, 18-year-old me would be horrified that I am not. And there would be plenty of people going, wait, she knows she knows dirty words. I'm like, yes, I know all of them, and I can enunciate them perfectly. Yeah, people would never hear me curse. But it's like but because when I do it, it's effective, because you don't expect it.
That is correct. Quite correct. Terry, what's your biggest beef with action scenes from other writers as a reader?
Not understanding the implements they choose to use. If you were going to write an action scene that involves combat with knives, swords, guns, fists, martial arts, whatever, at least have some basic grasp on how those sort of things work. Because when you have someone doing something that just is not realistic or even possible, then it knocks you out of the story. Do your research.
Glocks don't have safeties.
Glocks do not have safeties. If you're smart, you're not going to mention the specific brand of your handgun. You'll just mention a handgun.
That was another thing I was going to go into. When you narrow it down to exactly what the weapon is, what model it is, what make, when you go into gun porn land or knife porn land, and you start talking about what steel the knife is made of, have your shit together, because otherwise you are going to alienate so many fucking people who are just going to lose. They're just going to lose it over that.
And unless it's important to the story, you don't have to mention it.
Yeah, you don't have to mention it.
Because not everyone is going to be so enamored of that subject. They just want the story. So unless your character needs to know that specific bit of information, you can be general. But again, be aware of your genre. There's certain genres who if you're not specific, you'll get called for it.
I try and be as general as possible, except there are some particular things like in Extinction where I had to be very specific about what they had. But even then, like in Oceania, everything's custom, right? So I don't name arms manufacturers. Everything's cobbled together from or custom made. So I don't have to deal with, oh, it's a Smith & Wesson, yada, yada, or, whatever. I don't have to do that crap. JR says, what is worse, gun people or horse people when it comes to the details? I
don't know horse people
because there's more of them.
I don't know horse people, but
both. It's their equal levels of, oh my gosh, why didn't you research? Why didn't you ask? Same thing with sports romance. I've seen so many people call out authors who are trying to write to market without researching the intricacies of the actual sport.
Yeah.
And if you're getting that niche in a genre and you don't know what you're talking about, folks are going to call you on it. And
if you don't know the history of the two-line pass in the NHL, you haven't done your research.
Well, but you can get... If you think that the only Stanley Cup around is the one that she's bringing to practice to drink her Crystal Light out of, you got a problem.
Holy shit. Please tell me nobody did that.
No, nothing has been that extreme. But, trade deadlines. Saying, oh, yeah, well, he just got traded, during the first round of the playoffs. No, he didn't. That can't happen. They're little intricacies, and it's know your genre. If you're going to talk about, if you're going to talk about fighter jets, research, know what you're talking about. If you don't know, there are a wealth of people who are more than happy to help you out and answer those questions because it's their jam.
Yep. That is very, very, very true. John says, I actually bought the version of my main character's gun so I knew what it can do and what it can't. That's a good plan. I like that.
It's a good plan. I need to do that more often. I need to change guns every single book so that I can go buy a new one, and it's a business expense.
Oh, Terry. Oh, my God.
Oh, no. Terry's got a new series he's going to come up with for this sole purpose.
I was going to say, the good news is he writes far future sci-fi, so it's really not going to come up all that much.
Well, it's going to come up a lot because, I'm going to start this new series. It's going to be called Gun Porn, and I'm just going to go ahead and every single book, I'm going to shoot like 16 different kinds of guns, and I'll have to go buy each one just to go ahead and make sure that it's accurate.
JR says, I've seen a lot of romance writers doing the military hottie spec ops guy and get all the things wrong.
Yep. And that's the thing. You'll have a lot of those authors. They're either veterans themselves, or they are married to or have close family who have served or who are serving. And they know who to ask. And then you have folks going, oh, I'm going to pick some guy from the Army and have him as my main character, and I'm going to do this and this and this. And no. If you're going to write motorcycle romance, know what a motorcycle can do, please.
Know what a motorcycle is.
If you're going to write F1 racing, don't do all your research in NASCAR.
Oh, God, no. That would be bad. Ooh. Well, a good way to piss off two camps at the same time.
So it's those little things, but a lot of those little details come up during action scenes. So during a match, during a confrontation, during a race, during a battle.
I think it's funny how many times we try and bring the stuff in there, and somebody will get their panties in a wad over the most ridiculous detail that 99% of the people didn't catch or didn't find a problem with. But there's always some person goes, actually, it's like, oh, for fuck's sake. John says, and this is why I don't write romance.
That you haven't published. I know you, sir.
And did some ghostwriting in my day. It was weird. I've never ghostwritten. I've been asked to, but I've never done it. Not really all that interested. I got to be really hard up for money to do that.
Yeah. I have, there are too many other things that need to be done.
Boy, ain't that the truth. Ain't that the truth. What are some examples of action where they get it right?
Um,
Jared says one important part of action is how people emotionally react to intense scenes. They write people too robotic. Yes, physical responses.
that's a very
to
good
degree.
point.
Yep.
Yeah. Or, and also knowing that in certain situations, people do not react immediately. Because people love having, your flawed main characters or someone that's got, backstory and trauma. And one of the hallmarks of that trauma is that there is not an immediate reaction. There's a whole bunch of compartmentalizing and being mechanical for survival's sake. And then 2 chapters later is when everything falls apart. So
John
yeah.
says where they got it right, the final fight in Avengers Endgame. Where they really got it wrong, the last 30 minutes of Man of Steel. Haven't seen either.
Oh, noes. There's a crisis.
There are other humans in the house, sir. If you're going to yell at me, you better come in.
Yes, but you are mine at the moment.
Don't know
That's how
me.
it works.
Don't talk back to me.
JR says, I've seen people laugh hysterically in firefights. Why? I never knew, but he laughed in every gunfight. Maybe his parents were related before they had him, but it happens. Not everybody reacts to stress the same way. Period.
No.
In a story.
People get nervous and, and, people will release tension differently. And you can cry, you can yell, you can laugh. And that, the nervous laugh of people at funerals, this is a thing. It's just how that tension gets released.
Scott Sigler has an entire book or story series about one character who's always snickering and laughing while he's doing horrible things. And he cannot help himself. It's the only time he really laughs, but I can't remember the name of the character now. Somebody out there knows what I'm talking about. But that's what this character does.
Mm.
Is they laugh and they make jokes while they're doing the horrible violent shit. It's just the way it's just the way the character is.
Is that oh shoot.
It's like Smiling Man or something like that. Or I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's not Laughing Man, I don't think. That's something else. Jared says a lot of the indie military sci-fi get the details right, but a lot of them are GWOT guys.
What is GWOT for those of us who do not have that experience?
Kissy Man. Thank you, Matt. Kissy Man. That's who I'm thinking of. Yeah, what the hell's a GWOT? I'm waiting.
I do not know what a GWOT is.
Global War on Terror. Is that what GWOT is?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think I would think folks who were actually in the military on those terms would write it pretty well. I remember John Clark Pratt, prof at CSU that I had for writing, was talking about this one book that was written by a friend of his who was also in the Air Force and they flew missions in wrote this book, and the reviews were basically like, the flying parts are just fantastic and everything else. You feel like you're right in the cockpit. The rest of the story is absolute crap. So, yeah, you can get all the details right and still suck.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading Tom Clancy's The Bear and the Dragon, and granted, this was back in 2001, but I was on the same class of ship that was being referenced in the chapter I was reading. And I realized, like, as I'm reading this, I'm like, I just have to go one deck down and 2 compartments over, and oh shit, this is great. And I was invested because that little bit of, but it's Tom Clancy, of course he does research.
Nerd.
Yes, I picked my undergrad based on books I read. Yes, nerd.
Nerd. Not going to stop
But
saying
it's
nerd. That is cool.
But when you get those little, nuggets of information right, you win people over. If you get them wrong, you lose.
They leave and they won't come back more often than not. More often than not. Well, we've been at this for an hour, and since we have another show to do in 10 minutes, we better bring this one to a close. If you have a question or comment about this episode or any of our episodes, you can head over to deadrobotssociety.com, hit that contact button, and send us an email. Or you can leave a post on one of our YouTube episodes, where you can find us at youtube.com/DRS podcast, where we are live every Saturday at 3 p.m. CST. Like and subscribe so you know when we're live. And you can also join our Discord if you want to be in the community of weirdos that hang out there. Links are in the show notes. We'd be glad to have you. Let's see, what else do I have to say? If you want to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/DRS podcast and buymeacoffee.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you get access to exclusive live shows like the one we are doing in about 9 minutes. And if you contribute at the $10 level, your name gets read. Thanks for that. And our $10 patrons are Juan Valentin, James Terrell, Antoine Batts, Tony L. Joy, Rick Shaw, Lisa Slack, and Tim Niederreiter. Thank you to all of our patrons for making this show possible. With that, we are going to get out of here. That is a very regal looking cat at the moment. Never mind. She moved.
She did. Terry's humping cats again.
Go write some gun porn or something. Go do that.
Or come to After Dark and I'll talk about what happens in 1990s Toronto with ancient Mesopotamian marigold and what's inside them.
Can't wait. That we are out of here. Y'all have a fantastic weekend, and we will talk to you. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.